Baby girl, I need you to sit down for this one because I'm about to answer the question that you Google around 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, the one that you have asked your girlfriends over wine, the one you've asked Chat GPT, Perplexity, Claude, and probably a psychic named Luna on Instagram, right? And that question is, how long should I wait before I sleep with him? Everybody wants a number. Give me a number, Rachel. Is it 3 days? Is it 30 days? Is it 90 days? Do I wait until after I meet his mama? And here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. How long it takes before you sleep with a guy for the first time, it's not a number, right? I know. I know you came for a number and I'm taking it away from you, right? All within the first 60 seconds of this video. But what I'm going to give you instead is better. It's a lot better than a number. I'm going to give you the actual blueprint of how a man's brain moves from casual to intentional. Because once you understand that, you will stop counting days and you will start counting and reading behavior. And reading behavior will never lie to you the way a countdown clock will. So, today we're going to do this Q&A style, all right? Real questions answered by me in the same way that I would answer if you were my little sister. So grab a glass of wine and let's get into it. All right, so first question. Rachel, how long should I wait before I sleep with him? All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start here because this is one of the questions that I know lives rent free in your head, right? You meet a guy, things are going well, there's chemistry, you're feeling him, he's feeling you, and you don't want to mess it up. So you're like, I don't want to sleep with him too soon. So what should I do? Now, the research on this does not support like a universal wait this many days rule. Like, I don't know, the 90-day rule that we all remembered from Steve Harvey's book, or the same type of timeline that you may see people talk about on social media. Or hell, even the timelines that I used to give to my clients that was desperately seeking a number. But what the data actually shows is something far more useful than the amount of days. Now, whether or not you should sleep with a man in X amount of days, months, weeks, years depends less on a magic number and more on whether sex happens before there is clear evidence of interest in being exclusive versus what researchers call commitment readiness. All right. So I know I said a lot, but stay with me. So the first thing we're going to talk about is commitment readiness. All right. And I want you to drill that terminology in your brain because we're going to talk a lot about commitment readiness today. Because commitment readiness shows how prepared a man feels internally for a real relationship. All right. Not how attractive he is, not how much fun y'all had on the third date. It's really how ready he is for commitment. And here's the plot twist, sis. Studies on romantic commitment show men are actually more likely than women to say, I love you first. Okay. Men are more likely to say, I love you first than women. And how do I know? It happened with me. My husband told me, I love you first before I said I love him back to him. So So that's a good sign. Now, the reason why that is because men are more likely to feel good when commitment gets signaled early, as long as it fits what they're already looking for and that they're ready for it, right? So it has to be what they're looking for and that they're ready for it. It's those two pieces together that's important. Also, a lot of men are not moved by early intimacy the way we've been taught and the way we've been led to believe. What they are actually asking of themselves in terms of men is a very different question, right? And that question could be like, what does this mean about us? And when I say us, in his mind, he's talking about mind, body, and spirit. Girl, he's not talking about you just yet. He's still trying to figure out what that what that means for them. And that's kind of like the question that's running in the background of his mind. So now let's go into that man's mind for a second, that male brain for a second, right? Now, for some men, sex early on reads attraction and compatibility. That's some men. Now, for other men, it reads evidence that this is casual unless the woman is also communicating standards, intention, commitment, boundaries, et cetera, right? And the issue was never really truly about the timing of the act of sex. The issue is whether he perceives you as selective, as intentional, and consistent with an actual relationship trajectory, right? So a man can sleep with you on date number 2 and still take you seriously, right? Even down the aisle to marriage. And then conversely, on the other hand, you can have a guy wait 8 months and still treat you like an option, like a placeholder, like something to do in the meantime. So the variable was never about a clock, a calendar, a timeline, or anything. The variable has always been about you, the woman, right? And here's what the data actually says, because I promise you, I researched this, and this is not my blanket opinion. But a lot of the older research that I found about men is that on average, men expected sex earlier than women did, right? We know that. But men were also more likely than women to expect sex without having a deep and emotional closeness first, right? We know that. But what other studies have found is that couples who wait to have sex tend to end up with stronger relationships down the line. Now, again, it's tend, doesn't always mean the case, but this is important to understand, and that the effect depends on the length and the context of the relationship, not just the length itself. So, this does not mean waiting longer causes commitment, but what it means is that people who wait often already have clearer mutual intentions, right? So the pacing of the dating is stronger. There's a lot more clarity. There's less ambiguity. The waiting isn't the cause. The clarity is the cause. And so the waiting is just what clarity tends to look like from the outside. So you want to get clarity before you sleep with someone, right? That's really ultimately what it is. So here's your practical takeaway. And if you got a pen and paper, now you know when you come to my channel, you got to come with a pen and paper, because I want you to write this down. The better question was never, how long should I wait? The better question is, has he demonstrated commitment readiness before we get physical, before we are intimate? And ways you can determine commitment readiness is to look for consistency. That is a uniform theme throughout my videos. You want to look for exclusivity, meaning he's not seeing three other women while he's trying to get to know you, right? You want to look for communication, his communication skills. You want to look at consistency. Like, is he here one day and then he disappears for 4 days at a time? You want to look for follow through, meaning, does he do what he says he's going to do? Right? You want to look at future planning, meaning, does he talk about his future with you in any way, shape, or form? And when I say future, I'm not talking about the weekend. I'm talking about years down the line. Um, you don't necessarily need to use sex as a test, but you also don't need to give relationship level access to a man who has only given you situationship level clarity, right? Relationship level access requires relationship level clarity. And here's the male brain truth that I kind of want to leave you with today. Many men will enjoy sex quickly, right? That's not a mystery. That's not new information. But men who are serious usually do not need sex they usually don't need sex to come first in order to commit, right? What they need is to feel like the relationship is moving with purpose. So the most effective waiting period isn't the calendar. It's not days. It's not a quarter. It's not a year. It really is the vetting period. And it's your skill and your ability to vet properly before you sleep with him. And you need to also vet long enough to see if his actions matches his words about the long term. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Cool. Now, second question. Okay, Rachel, how do I know when he's shifting from just actually having fun with me to actually wanting to be serious with me, right? Because perhaps that may be a gauge to determine if you sleep with him. And I love this question because this is where the real education happens. So, from the male brain's side, from the male brain's perspective, the shift from casual to intentional happens when the connection starts giving him meaning, not just access, right? So, stay with me here. Meaning, not access. I want you to write that down on a sticky note if you have to, because here's what's happening underneath the surface. Early on, most men experience dating through attraction, right? To novelty, to fun, to low pressure exploration, right? That's normal. That's not a red flag. That's just any ordinary Tuesday in a male brain, right? But intentionality starts when he begins associating you with stability, safety, and his future, not just chemistry, right? Chemistry, you get that on the second date. Stability is what you get in the relationship. That's what gets you the relationship, stability. Now, research on commitment readiness also tells us that men move forward when they feel personally prepared for a relationship and when the bond fits his current goals and how he sees himself. So, in plain English, casual is, oh, she's fun. I like her. But intentional is, she's becoming a part of my life. I need her. And that is the entire shift right there, from enjoyable to part of my life. All right. So Right. Let me get my thoughts together here. So now let's talk about the actual mental shift, because I know you want mechanics. Like, you want the how-tos, you want the to-dos, you want the 1, 2, 3 steps, right? Okay. So the male brain tends to shift when three things happen right around the same time, right? The number one is he feels consistently chosen. So yes, ladies, you got to make him feel chosen too. Not chased, chosen. There's a difference, and I need you to remember that. Okay. Number two, he sees reciprocity, right? Meaning that he's not the only one pouring in. Because, child, these Instagram relationships will have you thinking only the man pours in and not the woman. But that's another story for another day. And number three, he notices the dynamic becoming more structured instead of fly by night, improvised on the whim, right? Like, you guys will stop winging it and winging things and start planning, right? So the early dating is very dopamine heavy. It's uncertain, it's primal, it's biology, you know? But intentionality grows when the connection becomes calmer and more predictive, less in the body, less in the loins, and more in the mind and heart, right? So more identity linked means that you start to feel like a part of who he is, and not just something or someone for him to do. That's important, because that is the moment he stops thinking like someone who is just consuming you and experiencing you. And then he starts to shift and start to think about building a relationship and a life with you. So he goes from consumer to builder, consumer to builder. That's the whole transformation, basically in a nutshell, right? So how do you actually spot it happening in real time? You might be asking yourself. Well, here are the observable signs, and I mean observable, not just vibes. Like, get the vibes out the door, not hopes, not just I feel like he's different. No, we're not doing vibes in 2026. We are observing, okay? Observable signs, okay? Signs that you can actually see. All right. So the first one, he starts planning ahead instead of, only wanting to do last minute things. So he's not calling you at 11 o'clock at night to come over. He's planning to see you a week in advance. He follows through on what he says consistently, not occasionally. So he's consistently following through. Um, Another thing he does is he introduces you into his real life. Like, he introduces you to his friends. He introduces you to his family. The parts of his world that he used to keep separate, keep aside, then he'll start to like protect the bond that is growing between the two of you instead of just enjoying you in the moment. Meaning he's thinking about consequences in regards to you now, not just outcomes of pleasure for himself. His communication becomes more consistent, um, not more intense, but consistent, right? He becomes more aware of how his choices affect you, how his choices affect your trust. That's a big one. And the last one is huge. And that's the one that women often miss, because the trust part, right? A man who is becoming intentional starts thinking before he acts because he doesn't want to break your trust, because trust is big for men. A man who is still casual does not think about your trust at all because in his mind, there's nothing permanent enough yet to protect. Yeah, he's not ready, you know? And the next point is something that I really want you to sit with, right? If sex is already present in a relationship by this point, watch what happens next. Okay. Now that you're getting this information, because when a man shifts into being intentional, sex stops being the main event. It becomes one expression of a much bigger event, a much bigger attachment. And it's no longer the peak of the interaction. The sex is a piece of the whole life, the whole interaction that he's building with you in it. And oh my God, when he does that, that is so beautiful. All right. All right. So now let's talk about what actually triggers the shift from going casual to intentional, because this is part that will show up, and I want you to be aware of it. Like, what triggers intentionality is rarely pressure. So let me say this again for those who actually need to hear it, right? Putting pressure on a man, giving him ultimatums, does not trigger intentionality, right? He doesn't magically become intentional because you need to know where the relationship stands, like right now, right now. No, that doesn't happen. Clarity about you and the role he sees you in his life is what triggers that intentionality. Does he see wife material? Does he see girlfriend material? Does he see future with you? And here's another tip that I want you to keep in the back of your mind. Men tend to shift when they believe the woman is selective, emotionally grounded, and not available for an indefinite amount of time. So if he feels like you for the streets, and if he feels like he can come in and out when he wants to, he's not going to shift to being committed, because all that communicates to him is one thing, right? He is looking for a woman who has standards and direction. So if you make it fluid and you about that life, you're not showing standard and direction. And in that kind of environment, here's the nuance that I also want you to hold on to, right? Sex does not create commitment by itself. I don't even think sex creates commitment at all. It never did, and it never will, no matter how good you are in bed. And regardless of what the group chat tells you, or how many times you can make his eyes roll in the back of his head and have him speaking in tongues, baby girl. But what sex can do, it can deepen commitment if it arrives after mutual seriousness is present. Remember, commitment, readiness. Awesome. So here's the next natural progression you could be asking. But Rachel, what if I already slept with him early on and now I'm scared? I ruined it. All right, girl, breathe. Okay, baby girl, breathe. I need you to hear something important, because I know some of you are watching this with your stomach in a knot, thinking that something negative has already happened because you guys have rolled around in the hay one too many times and you're enjoying it, right? Sex early does not automatically disqualify you from something real. Remember, remember what I said a little bit earlier. The issue was never the act itself. The issue is whether or not he perceives you as selective, as intentional, and consistent with him, right? So if you already crossed that line, the question isn't, can I undo it? You already slept with him. You can't unsleep with him. And chasing that thought is a waste of your energy. So you don't even want to go there, right? But the question is, what do I do from here going forward, right? At least that's what you should be thinking, especially if you want it to be more intentional. Do you start showing him, I want a commitment before you tell him or before you have sex with him again? Hmm? Perhaps do you start requiring consistency now? Hmm, maybe. Do you stop accepting ambiguity now? I mean, you think? Because a man will recalibrate based on new information. So the new information that comes in, he will recalibrate. He's like, oh, wow. Okay, she's changed. And he's not necessarily frozen in the first impression of you forever. But what he does need to see is a pattern and not a single data point. So if the early chapter was messy and you are no longer stuck with the messy as your permanent identity, then you get to show him who you are through this next phase, right? If you need clarity on what that is definitely one of my specialties. I really help women help transition that man to the next level. So go to my website, www.workwithracheldavis.com, and book a discovery call. And let's plan out what your next course of action will be. Okay? I got you. All right. So, next question that naturally progresses as this type of conversation happens is, how is this different from the whole don't have sex until marriage thing your grandmother used to say? My grandmama said it, my mama said it. I'm like, y'all know y'all lying. Y'all was having sex before marriage. Anyway, I digress. Good question. And I really want to be precisely here because I don't want you to think I'm just repeating old church rules without research, right? This conversation I'm having with you is not a purity argument. This is not a shame argument, a shameful conversation. This is about pacing and clarity and agreement with that, right? Your grandmother and my grandmother's generation, they had rules because back then the culture gave men very few other ways to demonstrate seriousness, right? Marriage itself was often the only proof of commitment available. But fortunately for us, if you find sex pleasurable, we don't live in that world anymore, right? Men today can show commitment readiness in a dozen more visible ways before marriage enters the conversation. And it's through some of the ways that I think I shared with you earlier on in this video, right? So, is he consistent? Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mean, these are the things that's important that you need to look for. Is he consistent? Um, is he following through with the things he says he's going to do? Is he introducing you to his people, or is he introducing you to the people that matter to him? Is he talking to you about the future, your future, his future, a combined future? So the modern version of your grandmother's wisdom doesn't necessarily translate to wait until marriage. It's wait until the evidence of commitment or the evidence of desired commitment is real. Now, the evidence can show up in weeks, not necessarily years. And the goal was never to abstain for the sake of abstinence, but the goal was and is, I think, should always be protecting yourself from confusing access with commitment, right? I hope that helps. All right. So, next question. What if he says all the right things, but I still feel unsure? Baby girl, this one matters more than any other question that we're going to go over today because words are the cheapest form of currency in early dating. Hell, in dating, period. Any man with a decent vocabulary can tell you what you want to hear. And let him not be charming. Okay? And that's not cynicism. That's just reality. And you already know where you stand if you're honest with yourself. And you also can pick up on what he's putting out. So you need to learn to listen to your internal wisdom as well, because a lot of the research on commitment readiness actually points to, his behavior over time and not necessarily declarations in the moment. Like, he could say whatever he wants to say to you, but his action speaks far louder. So if he's saying beautiful things, but your body still feels unsettled, my girl, trust your body. That unsettling feeling, it's data, it's information, it's what you need. And it usually means that there's a gap between what he's saying and what he's consistently doing, or maybe consistently not doing. And when words and actions don't match, always, always, always believe the actions every single time. Words mean nothing. Actions, now actions and behavior, that is the language of commitment readiness. All right. Words are just advertisements for it. Don't believe the words, believe his actions. All right. Next question. Rachel, does any of this change for women like me who are successful, busy, leading teams, building companies, building businesses, running things, running shit? Like, does any of this change? And I'm so glad that you're asking or that you're thinking about this, because again, these are natural progression type of questions. And here's what I've noticed after coaching a fairly good amount, a substantial amount of accomplished women, right? You're so used to being evaluated on outputs and on results. We're used to being evaluated on performance and what can be measured, that it is tempting to bring that same framework into dating. We want a metric. We want to quantify something. We want to measure. We want to make sure it works. You want to know what the KPI is. Like, you want the number of days that guarantees the outcome that you want. And I mean, I get it. I totally get it. But that doesn't work in relationships. Relationships, they don't run on metrics. They don't run on KPIs, sis. They run on feelings. They run on nervous systems. They run on your nervous system and his nervous system, your heart and his heart, your brain and his brain, your soul and his soul. That's what they run on. And here's the trap that I see women like us fall into constantly, right? You're used to pushing through. You push through discomfort to get results. You push through stress and anxiety and nervousness to get results. So sometimes you'll ignore that unsettling feeling about a man, even when it's telling you something that you should not ignore, because you're used to pushing through. You'll rationalize ambiguity because you're impatient with his timeline. You're impatient with your own timeline. You're impatient with the timeline that your natural wisdom is telling you. You're impatient with your heart and your soul telling you to slow down. All right. Being excellent at your job doesn't mean that you should apply deadline or pressure to a man's emotional and relational readiness, right? Commitment readiness. Because the commitment readiness, it moves at its own time. It moves in its own timeline, and you can't optimize it like you would a quarterly project. It's just not going to work. you know? And your job is to not make him move faster. Your job is to understand your timeline and to see if your timeline aligns with his, right? Your job is to accurately read where he actually is and decide, like I said, whether or not that matches with where you are right now and with what you need right now. Is that fair? Good. Now, here's what I will say, right? The biggest mistake I see women make with timing, with wanting to know 30 days, 90 days, a quarter, 6 months, a year, what have you, The biggest mistake I see women making with timing is treating sex as a tool that will produce commitment instead of treating commitment as the thing that you're actually assessing for, right? So let me say that a different way so that it really lands, right? In plain English. Some women use sex to try to lock a man in, consciously or not. Um, and there's a belief that's running quietly in the background, quietly underneath, that says if I give him my body, he'll want to stay. He'll want a commitment because my sex is just that good. But the research states that sex does not create commitment by itself. And I think I said this earlier. It never did. It never will. So if you're using sex as a strategy, if you're using sex as leverage, as a way to fast track his feelings, then you're playing a game that you know you can't win. The data even states that you can't win it, right? And the second biggest mistake I see, it's a sneaky one. The second biggest mistakes is I see women making, it's confusing intensity with intentionality. So a man can be intensely into you, texting constantly, wanting to see you every night, calling you 2, 3 times a day, calling you baby, whispering sweet nothings in your ears. That intensity, it's not intentional. Because intensity is about right now, but intentionality is about the future. And that's where I want women to focus on the intentionality. Intentionality and intensity, they're not the same thing, even though they can feel identical in the moment, especially if you haven't been shown the difference before, right? And this is exactly why we built the architect framework. And I'm coming out with it very soon. I'm so excited about it because different women with different attachment patterns tend to fall for intensity over intentionality in very specific, different, and predictable ways. Oh, and by the way, the architect framework I'm referring to, as I said, yeah, it's a shameless plug for a project that I'm working on that I will be releasing very soon. I'm excited about it. And so if you're interested in learning about it, stay tuned to this channel because it'll be out very, very soon. So stay tuned. All right, let's shift gears. Let's get back to business. All right. Now, let me tell you something that I don't say enough on this channel. Like many of you may not know this, but I am happily married. I have been happily married to my husband, the love of my life, for 16 years. 16 years. And I want to be honest with you here about how we got to 16 years because for those of my girlfriends in the past, you know it wasn't clean. It was not conventional. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I floated into this marriage on a cloud of perfect boundaries and perfect, established, you know, evidences. Before I met my husband, I kissed my fair share of frogs, right? And when we met each other, we had both had just come out of our own respective marriages, right? We were both hurting. We were both bruised. We were both a little reckless with each other, if I'm honest. And we played, right? For a while. We genuinely just played around with each other, which was a lot of fun, right? But I tell women all the time, don't do what I did to get this man. And I mean that because if you're not strong and you don't have the stomach to handle uncertainty, the uncertainty of just playing without any evidence of commitment, like if you don't think you can handle that in the season of hurt that you're in, don't do it, right? Don't do it. Do not do it. Don't do it. Um, but here's what I do want to share with you, and I want you to understand about that chapter in my life. Because I came out of a marriage to a man that I was with since I was like a teenage girl, the playing for me was necessary, right? It wasn't wasted time, even though there were moments that it felt like I was wasting my time with this man. Because by the time we both got ready and by the time we both were serious about each other, we had burned through all of the confusion. We had already seen each other in ugly, unguarded, undefined, um, lack of consistency stage, so to speak. So when the time came to actually get married, to actually commit, to actually build a life together, there was no more testing the waters because we had been in the waters. He knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was the one, and I knew he was as well. And I can tell you without a single doubt that marrying that man has been the best decision that I have ever made in my life when it comes to having a life partner. We never looked back. We never looked back. Not once. So why am I telling you this in the middle of this video about male psychology and timing? It's because I want you to understand something, right? One thing I want you to understand is sometimes it can be messy and it's okay, right? Um, and this isn't just theory to me, right? Like I didn't read this on someone's blog or, repeat like a parrot what everybody and their mama are saying on these Instagram and TikTok and Facebook streets, right? I lived the casual to intentional shift from the inside as a grown ass woman who had already been married once and who had already been hurt and who was not new to this, right? I can even tell you the shift. I can tell you that when that shift happens, it's real and you can feel it when it's happening. You can see it when it's happening if you know what to look for. So that's why I'm not here trying to sell you a fairy tale, right? I'm giving you the blueprint so that so that you'll know for yourself. And so that, if you're like asking yourself, how do I make sure I'm not fooling myself into thinking he's commitment ready when he's not? That's the question that I want you to keep asking yourself. Because that is the question that separates women who keep getting hurt from the women who finally get it right, like I did. Because sometimes a man's behavior may mimic being intentional without him being intentional, right? He could be playing you, right? But I want you to learn to understand the discernment so that you're no longer being fooled by men who play you, right? So, if that's the case, I want to share with you some false signals to look for because these men out here, they are good at playing you. You think it's real when it's not. So, false signal number one is love bombing disguised as pursuit. A man who is overwhelming you with attention one week and is not necessarily showing you commitment readiness. Sometimes he's showing you urgency, which is a completely different thing, right? Urgency fades, that intensity fades, but readiness and consistency, that's what builds, right? So watch what happens to his attention by week 6, right? Not week 1, because you want to see long term, because in the beginning, he'll be hot and heavy. You want to see when the consistency comes in. right? False signal number 2, future talk with no follow through. Ooh, and girl, some of these men are fluent in future talk. They will we you and us you to death. They'll mention trips. They'll mention meeting their family. You know, they'll say a whole bunch of stuff, but understand that talk is cheap, right? When it's not backed by a single concrete evidence of action, right? If he's saying, we should go to Mexico for 4 months straight and he hasn't booked flights, he's not intentional. It's a script. All right. So watch for intentionality. False signal number 3. That one is jealousy, often mistaken as something real, right? A lot of women read possessiveness and jealousy as proof that he's serious, right? He got upset when another man talked to me. That means he cares. Baby, jealousy is about his ego. Okay. It is not about commitment readiness because he will be jealous for every woman that's in his life currently. Right. A man who is becoming, a man who is, I guess, genuinely becoming intentional feels secure enough to not need to control you or your environment at all. Possessiveness and partnership are not the same energy. And I need you to stop confusing the two, right? So, false signal number 4, right? Physical affection as a stand in for emotional access. Girl, he pulls you in, he holds you close, he's affectionate in public, he's generous physically, he's amazing in bed. That can absolutely coexist with intentionality, but it is not proof of commitment readiness. The proof is whether he's also giving you emotional access. Is he letting you in? Does he tells you what's actually going on with him? Does he let you see him stressed and uncertain and vulnerable? Does he let you see him human? Or is the physical closeness covering the emotional distance. Because a man could be physically close to you in your bed every night and emotionally on the other side of the planet, right? Here's how you can tell the difference between real and performed intentionality. Real intentionality is boring, okay? It's boring in the best way possible. It's consistent. It's slower than what you want it to be sometimes. It doesn't need an audience. It's not loud. It's not performative, right? Performed intentionality, on the other hand, is loud. It's dramatic. It's front loaded. It's designed to convince you quickly before you have enough information to see the pattern. It's a show. You don't want that. So, when you're evaluating a man's shift from casual to intentional, don't ask, does this feel intense? Right? Ask, does this hold up over time without me needing to manage his emotions to keep it going? Consistency. All right? That question alone, baby girl, will save you years. Consistency, consistency, consistency. So now let's recap, right? You may be thinking to yourself, I don't know, if you had to remember one thing from this video, what would it be? Right? Because we said a lot. I said a lot. So if you were to take away one thing from this video, what do I think it should be? A woman should not wait for a number of days. No. A woman should wait until a man has shown commitment readiness because men read sex through the lens of meaning, not just desire, right? And here's the second half of that truth before we wrap up. the one about the shift itself, right? A man will go from casual to intentional when he no longer sees you as a temporary experience, right? When he starts seeing you as someone whose presence changes his future, someone whose presence he's willing to change his routine and his identity for. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's what you're looking for. That's it. That's the whole video, distilled into one sentence that you can actually use. So, sis, stop counting days and start watching for meaning. Start watching for structure. Start watching for consistency. Start watching for emotional readiness. Start watching for whether he's protecting you, while you're building, or if he's just enjoying your body and just what's happening right now. Because a calendar can't tell you that, only his behavior can. All right? So, if this helps, please, please, please send this to other women that you know that you feel this video will help as well. If you need some clarity, if you know other women who needs clarity, share this video with them. If you want to take this work deeper, go to the website, book a discovery call. Let's get you clarity. So that way you're not stuck on a timeline and you have the discernment that you need to have. You've have the discernment that you need to learn to know how to look for intentional action and not unintentional convenience. All right. So with that being said, my name is Rachel Davis, the love doctor, the love alchemist, the love bestie that you need. And I'm here to help you shape the love life that you not only deserve, but you most certainly desire. Take care. God bless you. Mwah. I love you. I'll see you in the next video. And always, always, always stay beautiful.